Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk with Vernard. I am Vernard. I'm so excited because today I finally get to talk to my friend Dana. Did I say that right?
Dana.
Dana.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah, you got it.
Dana.
Yeah,
Dana.
Dana.
And how do you say your last name?
Yashou.
Yashou.
Mm-hmm.
We volunteer together at Faith Church. We're both in leadership for the high schoolers. And I've known you for a year and some change.
Mm-hmm.
We've been trying to make this happen for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally been years. Even though I've only known you for a year, it's been years.
Feels like that. It feels like you've been wanting to do this.
Yeah,
for years.
I've been asking.
I've been dodging it for years.
You have, but you literally dodging my calls. But the reason that I wanted to talk to you specifically is because I think that you have a very unique perspective just on life living in the U.S. You are an immigrant, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And where are you from? I don't want to talk for you.
So I'm Syrian by blood and nationality before becoming an American, but I was born and raised in the United Arab Emirates.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You didn't?
Nope.
I thought you did.
I did not. Now I do. Now I know.
Okay.
But yeah. And
so I don't know when people ask where you're from. It's just, do I say Syria? Do I say the Emirates? Because that's where I grew up. But I cannot say that because my blood is Syrian. My parents immigrated from Syria to the Emirates before they had us, my brother and I.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because, we live in Allentown. I live in Allentown. Do you live in Allentown?
Yeah.
Yeah, we live in Allentown, and Allentown has a massive Syrian population. And they all kind of, well, you said this, they all know each other, which I think is really cool, just to have a network of Syrians there. And so one of the big things that I've been really fascinated with just over the course of many years, I'm a big fan of history. And I have a deep fascination with American history. And obviously our relationship with the Middle East is one of the most unique and sad.
Unfortunate. It's an unfortunate relationship.
Yeah, things that exist. And so to hear from someone who knows the Middle East better than the average American, but lives in America, it's just very interesting. So I wanted to, just talk to you about your perspective. So my first question, I guess, would be what is your this is a very broad question, but what is your opinion on just the state of the Middle East as far as relations with America goes?
Wow. So before coming here, my husband said, no politics. So, and we come from a culture that is traumatized from talking about politics. Syria is not a safe space for you to discuss politics, especially if it's anti-government. So if I was doing this and saying this in Syria, I might, disappear the next day, unfortunately. So it's always, when you go public, don't talk politics because you never know, where that's going to go. And unfortunately, you think you live in a country now where you're safe to do that, but you're not. Because, yes, I'm not going to disappear if I say things, that is against or that is counter the mainstream opinion, the lashback, the cancel culture that you live in, that's, more than enough for you to refrain from discussing things like that. So I'm going to try to be as humane as possible, maybe with my answer, not speaking of, what the governments should or shouldn't do, but the relationship mainly could go under one big umbrella where, the United States is a powerful country and it's, it's the maybe greatest power that, and knowing from the United Nations too, like a veto from the United States of America counts negates all other votes for whatever it is that the issue is being discussed. So it's a power country. It's, and it needs to practice that power. And for America to have that power in the Middle East, things are not going to be, peaceful and blissful, for the Middle Easterns. And that power now, or has been, with the allyship, because they couldn't be allies with, let's say, Syria, where I come from, or, the other big countries that are there, the allyship is maintained with Israel. And then Israel is trying to form allies as well in the Middle East. And it's just because America needs eyes and ears and existence over there without causing too much, trouble. But trouble is being caused, know.
So when did you move to America?
2010.
Oh, okay.
I was 24, I believe. And we moved here, my husband and I. So again, I grew up in Dubai. And I think if you speak to another Syrian who grew up in Syria and has lived there all, her life, she might have completely different opinions or things to say. And I think it's because, and if you wanted to know more about how Syrians look at this or see this, I'm not qualified for that because I did not suffer the way they did. I did not grow up in the circumstances that they did. I was not in the war, that happened in 2011. I did not face any trauma from that sense, in war zones. So not even in the past, like even the wars before that, I did not live through them.
Just missed it. Yeah. But I mean, I was safe. You're still connected to.
Absolutely. We hear stories and my parents, keep talking about it. So I do hear stories. I do hear opinions. Growing up sheltered kind of makes you feel like you're uncultured. And I've always had that feeling all my life, even now, because I'm Syrian and I love it. I love saying it. I take so much pride in my country and my flag. I do not approve everything the government does and never did, never will. Like any government of any country, I'm not, heart
a nationalist.
A heart follow, a nationalist, if that's the word. So I always use my common sense. I always use my logic. I always use what's in it for the people, this policy or this. And same thing with America. But being brought up in different cultures, made that easy for me. I wasn't brainwashed in schools the way others were, even here. I didn't grow up here, so I wasn't, brainwashed about the Middle East, like others were. So I love that. It was a struggle and still is that I'm uncultured, even now, even in America. Like I've been here for 13 years. I don't consider myself cultured like the Americans. And it's a struggle because people think you're weird when you ask questions. Or when you don't know what they're talking about, or when you even go against what they're talking about. When you think, oh, that's the logical thing, especially with politics here. And it's hard, but it's a blessing to be uncultured. I'm going to be very honest.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's interesting, like you came to America at a time where things became very heated, like there's always been a lot of political disagreement, whatever. But I would say like things really picked up in the 2010s, especially like 2016 and onward, where you are seeing people like draw harder lines, like where they stand as far as certain things go. And so I've just been entirely fascinated by those who kind of skirt around the lines of like, I don't fall in one full direction. Like, I can see good on both sides. I can see bad on both sides. And because of that, I'm going to, remain like kind of, I don't want to say an outsider, but like detached in a way. And so, I mean, everything you're saying is really just really cool. Yeah, just the way that you were able to avoid getting too far into a camp, so to speak, that you have your entire mind kind of set in that way. Like, I think that's really important, especially now when people just, when everything lacks nuance and everything lacks like real thoughtfulness, you know, like people just, they see something and they're like, oh, that's what that is, you know, and it's like, dude, like there's so much nuance, there's so much going on that you just don't even understand. And yeah, it's usually the minds who are detached to a degree who can actually be like, yo, like, and speak to that. And you have been. We follow each other on social media.
Always.
Yeah.
Always, and with everything. And I think I do have a critical brain to begin with. So I analyze things all the time, whether it's human behavior or whether it's in my, personal relationships or friendships. I'm always analyzing, and I'm always not necessarily criticizing, but, when criticism is required, I'm always, why aren't they doing this? Why are they saying this? And it's hard because I don't find people like me all the time. And I'm not surrounded by people like me, whether it's on this side or that side, whether it's my Syrian, friends and culture, or it's the American people I met, in my life here. And this is why I told you, if you sit with a Syrian person who grew up in Syria, they might not have that moderate stance that I have. And I do feel like I wish everybody has that. The critical mind in me always sees things. This morning, and it's funny because I was watching, I watch different news outlets because I do not want to always hear it from one side. And by nature, that's how it is, not just with politics in my life. I've lost friends because of that as well. But it's just, I want to hear it from all sides. I don't want to judge. I don't want to be quick to, oh, you're wrong, you're right. And so I was hearing mainstream media this morning on my cable TV. And the things they were saying about events happening in the Middle East was just crazy lies. Like, it's not true. It's not true. I know it's not true about certain incidents, and because I know people who are living there and they saw it, so it's not true. But everybody else is watching and they think it's true. And my husband was sitting next to me. I'm like, you should be really out of logic to believe that this is true. Like, there's no logic to that specific news incident that just happened. There's no logic, in it. But because this is what we are being fed, that, oh, it's the media and it's true because they said it is. So therefore that is true. No, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's been the state of everything. Like
everything.
Again, especially the last, I'd say 7 years in America, social media has just propelled that forward, especially just the way that people, I call it cherry picking the truth, and they would just cherry pick certain aspects that they want to focus on while ignoring other ones. And I mean, so coincidentally, in 2016, I was in college then, and I took one of the most important, I think, courses that I've ever taken in any of my schooling, and it was one that like barely had to do with my major, which is funny. It was media literacy, and so it was literally like we were studying to become literate in the media and how it works. And just the overall thesis of that course was just like, the media is a profit-driven thing, therefore it's just like everything you see, you always have to keep in mind this is profit-driven, and at the end of the day, what they want the most is my view. What they want the most is me to watch whatever they're looking at, to click on whatever video they have. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, that is what they're after. And they will say that we're soldiers for the truth, or we're just trying to get the story out there. Journalism is so important, and da 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it is, right? Like, journalism has its place, but just the way that it is now used and twisted and picked apart so that it can be sensationalized and put out there in a way that people are going to be like, huh, what? That's happening? Whoa, and maybe they'll use like a fact or two that's true, taken out of context, or just all these other things, and it's super frustrating, just to see what I think are really competent people, really intelligent people, who sometimes get way too emotionally attached to certain movements or certain things, and they become blinded, you know, and fail to see a thing for what it fully is. And what really gets me is the way people treat each other at the end of the day. It's like the way that we start looking at each other because of the things that we think that other people believe, you know, the things that we think other people are a part of is crazy. And it's like,
and then we label them, and then we call them names.
Yep.
And then we put them in a box, and
yeah,
and that's these are those. Yeah, we don't deal with those.
Yep. These people are inhumane. These people
ignorant
are evil. Yeah.
Ignorant is a big one.
Ignorant. Yep. And it's just like,
I've been called that. Yeah.
Yeah. Ignorant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
I've been. Yeah.
Same.
Just because just because I don't follow a certain party.
Yeah.
Fully. I'm ignorant because
Yep.
I don't know enough. And it's no.
Same. People question my blackness because of just the way that I refuse to go completely into something. Like, I can look at a cause and be like, this is absolutely valid, but I can also look at aspects of the cause and be like, this is wrong, and the way that we're thinking about certain things is wrong, and call what's wrong. But people, when you're affiliated with a certain side,
you can't call anything wrong.
You can't call anything wrong on your side.
That's crazy. Why it's unfortunate.
And it's so funny because so many people who are on opposite sides hold the same values and hold the same beliefs, but just don't even realize that, like, you know, if you actually tried to have a conversation, like, yeah,
it's been so yes, that's very true, because I've been around people who follow certain parties to the end. And when I ask questions, and I genuinely ask those questions because I never followed anything to the end. I was always a question asker, you know, and a truth seeker in every situation. And so when I was asking genuine questions, I realized that they have the right heart, you know, they care just as I do, but it's just how either they were brought up or indoctrined, or the media that they're watching is what's forming this restrictions in their minds to actually go outside of that box and think for themselves.
Yes.
And when they do, it becomes great conversations. Beautiful conversations we have. They don't change the party they belong to, and that's okay. But the conversation was done, and it was had, and it, you know, we keep having it every time we see each other because we both benefited from it. I like to see how, and I don't want to call it radicalism, but it's, you know, it sort of is. I don't know what's the less word for that, but, you know, when you sit and speak with a radical as a moderate, it is eye-opening for the radical and for the moderate. But when two radicals are talking to one another, there is no way you can move any of them, because they're talking for the purpose of convincing. And that radical is also talking for the purpose of convincing.
Listening to respond and not to actually hear.
Nobody's going to get convinced that way. So I've been there, and that's the benefits of being a moderate. It's, you know, having conversations like that go deeper than, you know, this and that. I want to go back to your media, you know, the media course that you took. I had a professor. So I went to an American college, American University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. And our professors were different nationalities, different parts of the world. And all my friends were different nationalities, different parts of the world. I grew up in schools with Indians and Filipinos. And then my high school was with Lebanese and Jordanians, more people from the Middle East. And we're all different. And I love how we say the Middle East, but gosh, you know, every country is completely different with its culture 100%. And traditions, and even dialect and habits, and even faith. You know, Muslims or Christians in this country are different than Muslims and Christians in that country in the Middle East. And so I was surrounded by all of those growing up, and that's also a benefit. You know, I wasn't surrounded by one group, one ethnic race, one ethnic group, one religion, and grew up all my life like that. I was blessed to have different faiths around me. You know, I was blessed to grow up with Asians from the Far East. And so when I went to university, it was normal. Every professor has a different nationality. And I went in as to do journalism. So my main, going in, that's what I wanted to study. So you study mass media, and my concentration was going to be journalism. And when I started taking journalism courses, one of the professors for journalism was American, and his name was Dr. Gibbs. And that was, gosh, I'm a class of 2008. Graduate of 2008 from college. So that was a long time ago. And he had one assignment for us to prove to us that it's so hard to be unbiased when you are writing an article for journalism. And he would pinpoint every single thing where the assignment was write an unbiased article. And then he would circle all the words that I used. And, that's for every student. He would circle the words that we use and say, this is biased. If this comes first, then this is biased. If this goes there, if you use this word, then this is biased. It was so hard. And he came to me and said, if you think you were going to change, if you think you're doing journalism to change the world, and back then in the Middle East, I don't know if it's the same now, but you cannot be honest in journalism. And I just told you, like, even if I'm having a conversation at home with my family about politics, I would be in trouble. So let alone if I'm writing something that is anti-government, that would not be okay. And he said, if you think you were going to change the world with that, or the Middle East, it's not going to happen, Pick something else and have your journalism as a minor.
Wow.
And I took his word, and he said, you should do literature or language because you're an analyst. Like, I would just read something and think through it and read between the lines. And I did that. I didn't know why I did it. I didn't want to be a teacher. And fast forward now, that's all I want to do. I want to be with kids and youth all day. I teach at different school districts. I'm a substitute teacher for them because of the flexibility. I'm in different classes with different kids every day. I do youth ministry. I've been doing it for 10 years. And I think deep down, God said, maybe you are going to be a teacher one day. And Professor Gibbs saw that somehow. But I did that, and I'm glad I did that, because journalism is so restricting. It could have changed me.
Yeah.
It could have changed me.
I mean, you look at some of the people who are at the forefront of journalism these days, and I always think it's so interesting how certain journalists will get followers depending on whatever network they're on. They have their own show, or they have their own podcast, or all these different things. And I'm always just like, dude, like, do you understand the people who like follow them? I'm like, do you understand, like, their first priority is themselves. Their first priority is putting themselves out there in a super saturated market with like journalism, with social media and everything like that. That's all you can do. And it's like, you have to understand that the facts and everything are just naturally going to come second. Whoever says that, like, I'm after the truth, it's like, you are, but you're after your own interests first. And
your network's interest.
Yeah, and one has to bow to the other.
Yeah.
And so you're inherently flawed. Like, a lot of them are super intelligent, and I'm like, yeah, they say a lot of good things sometimes that I think are interesting. A lot of other things that I'm just like, that's a super hot take. But like, at the end of the day, it's like, whoever it is, they are doing this, going home at night being like, man, I did good for myself. You know what I mean? For themselves. And when you are in a world where you're talking about things that are actually affecting other people, and the reckless things that people say, it's like, it's just sad, because you're right. It's journalism. It's that world that shifts it. And again, that's not to say that journalism, I think, is inherently bad. I think there's something about it that works.
Knowing what's going on in the world.
Yes, being aware. But there is a way to go about it and to talk about it thoughtfully. And yeah, I think you got the right idea. I mean, that's why I love serving. I mean, I've been doing youth min since I left high school. And just volunteering and just being able to talk to kids who, most of which, like, just didn't grow up the same way that I did. You know, I'm a first generation American and have different experiences. Obviously, I grew up, in America, and having a hodgepodge of experiences is really cool to be able to talk to kids who are a little one-track minded, and just be like, hey, like, the world is bigger than you think, and there's stuff that's going on, I mean, close to you that you probably have no idea about, and you could benefit, you know, as a Christian, as a person, just to learn about how other people live their lives, and and what's happening, and do so just for the sake of
We talk
educating.
a lot I talk with my kids. So my kids are first generation Americans as well, and they're surrounded by people who are and they're young, they're in middle school, so all the kids around them hear what they hear at home and come and say it. So
Yep.
it's absolutely not the words of the child, it's the words of the parent.
Mm-hmm.
And that was since 2016, like since those elections. You know, my kids would come out of the bus and speak of certain candidates, you know, like they
Mm-hmm.
know them, or they know what they did, or
Yeah.
they know who they are. And it's the words of the kids on the bus. And I've always taught my girls to think the way I do.
Hmm.
And it's, don't just judge or vote or pick a side because everybody else is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they said this person was bad, that doesn't make them bad. Find out why they think, you know, they're
Mm-hmm.
bad. Read about it, talk about it. And now my girls are older, and now there's this, you know, uprising happening in the Middle East, and they hear all sorts of things, you know, oh, Israel, oh, Palestine, oh, this, oh, that. And we talk, you know, we
Mm-hmm.
talk. And it's usually, my voice is usually the opposite of everything they're hearing in schools around them.
It's for sure the opposite that I'm seeing on social media.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to have a certain opinion.
Yeah. And I love that my word at this age weighs more. It's one word, it's one person, but it weighs more than all the people around my kids. But at a certain age, they're going to grow up, and my word might not weigh this, you know, this much anymore. And the bigger picture for them is think for yourself. If your friends are saying this is the issue, read about it. Look at different sources. Let's switch. And they see me switching screens all the time, you know, when I'm watching news. They see me. And sometimes they get fed up because they want to watch, you know, their stuff. And, you know, it's just, they see it. They see that I'm watching. Why do you keep switching? They ask. And the answer is, it's because this channel and this channel are talking about the same issue in two different perspectives. And I want to see what they're saying here and what they're saying there. And there's one truth. In some events, there's one truth. And I want to see who's and funny, it's none of them are talking about the truth, you know, from my cable. I have to go to Middle Eastern sources. I have to go to my friends who are living on land. I have to, you know, follow journalists, you know, from there to know what's actually happening. So it's nice to raise a generation that thinks for themselves and not what the TV is telling them or that one certain channel. And when you were talking about the hosts, hosts that their main focus is themselves and their networks, but what feeds them is the people who back them up.
Yep, that's absolutely true.
They worship them.
Yeah.
And they believe every word that has been said, and they take it as their personal ideology. You know, when it's just the networks and whoever's paying for the network, that's the ideology, you know, that needs to be followed. And that is sad, you know, because we're adults. We should know better. We should know that when somebody says something, I need to question it or question where it's coming from.
It's very interesting because you and I obviously were Christian, and I mean, I could say more about that. Just the fact that, like, growing up, me in America, in post 9/11 America, like, to hear that there is a large population of Syrians or just people in the Middle East who are Christians, I was like, what? I was like, you're not all Muslim? You know, because that's just what we grow up learning, you know, or we just associate that with that. And it's like, there is nuance everywhere. And so anyways, so yeah, I mean, the fact that we are both Christian and living in a very, I guess, progressive time is what they'd say. And I've been saying forever, it's like, man, everybody subscribes to a religion, whether they believe in a God or not, you know, and some religions are movements, some religions are on a TV show or on social media. Everybody subscribes to a religion. And this idea that religion / faith is like, can only be in this one box. And it's like, oh, well, you believe in this and that, and that's harmful to the world. I'm like, dude, like, your religion, your Bible is Twitter. You know, like, your Bible, like, where you get your idea of the world or whatever, or how to treat people and everything, you are also getting that from things that are that you can't necessarily see. You know, like so I just think that's a very interesting aspect.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of Christians in the Middle East. Faith is a big one. Even the Muslims in the Middle East, like you just, and again, if you speak to a Syrian who grew up in Syria,
Yeah.
and maybe who have gone through the war, the 2011 up to 2019 war, they might have not might, they are definitely going to give you a different response about religion and faiths than I would. But being uncultured and who did not go through the trauma of, you know, living in poverty or in war or in under failed government or all that, and growing up in a country where I was surrounded by Muslims and Christian friends, in fact more Muslims than Christians in the United Arab Emirates when I was growing up. I think now it's you know, there's people from Europe who live there in America and all that. I think it's nice to know the goods of all the faiths.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's, you see the human side of the Muslims and of the Christians. And I personally did not develop a relationship with Jesus Christ up until I started maybe youth ministry in 2013. But more so, it happened when I say this with all the love, but it happened when I moved from a Catholic church into a Protestant church. And growing up in the Middle East, it's you're either Catholic or Orthodox as a Christian. You know, there are some evangelicals there. There was a movement there, you know, missionaries coming from America and, you know, other countries to build evangelical churches. But the main denominations were Catholics and Orthodox. So that's all I grew up with. That's all I grew up with in the United Arab Emirates too, because there was a Catholic church and an Orthodox church. Only later, when I was an adult, was an evangelical church. So then coming here and seeing all these denominations. What do you mean there's more than Catholic and Orthodox? We didn't know. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was so sheltered into this or that. That's it. You mean there's more? You mean what's the difference? What? And you know, it's funny because when you ask somebody what is the difference, sometimes it's the pastors that I've asked or the priests. They don't give you an answer that makes sense. You know, the difference would be the history.
Yeah.
But it's not a fundamental theological difference. There could be one or two. For some of them, it's big. Big differences. Yes, which just looking up, reading about it, you know, you find the differences. But I couldn't cultivate a relationship with Jesus Christ in my daily life other than going to church on Sundays or Wednesdays or whenever youth group was. In my everyday life, from wake to sleep, I couldn't cultivate it until I started seeing Jesus from another perspective, which is when I moved into a Protestant church. And I don't know if it's because of the difference in theology or if it's just the different type of I moved as a youth leader, and so I had to do some leadership training, and in order to bring youth closer to Christ, I had to, you know, train myself as well to get closer to Christ and how that happens. And maybe that could be it. It could be nothing to do with, you know, the denomination. But I go back to Syria, or I speak to Syrians, or I go back to my friends who are still living in the United Arab Emirates or in Dubai or in Sharjah, and they're still where they are. It's still there, you know. There's still, you know, Catholics, Orthodox, this and that, and who's better and who's not. We joke about, you know, Jesus was Orthodox, no, Jesus was Catholic. They, you know, they do all these things as jokes, and I'm on a different. It's not a different page. I'm in a completely different book now. And I think the way I look at politics is from the Jesus lens, is from the godly lens, and it's not separated. But with politics in this country, everything is politics. Food is political, you know. Schooling is political. The drugs, the medicine you take, that's political too. Like everything is political. It's not, you cannot, poverty here is political. It's not social. is political. Healthcare, everything's political. Wearing a mask during COVID was political in this country when it wasn't in any other country. Whether you wore it or not, you had your own, I'm going to be fine. I'm a superhero. I won't get sick. But it wasn't a political decision in other countries. It was more of a political decision here. Vaccines is not a political decision in other countries, a political decision here. And for me, I look at all these in a religious perspective. For me, it's Jesus. It's God. It's all these can be faith related, but in America, it's political related.
Wow.
And I think that is the problem with America.
I would say that's the cost of. That's not the cost. That is the result of living in a free country. Is you are free to put whatever out there that you believe. And sadly, just the way that people are wired, it's like we're going to align. And it just causes so much discourse and division. And while, just the natural state of America, like this isn't a war-torn country, you know what I mean? Like we have it good over here. But just the things, I think about the things that we could be getting done for our fellow man that aren't getting done because people are focused on things that literally don't matter at all.
They want us to focus on these things and fight over these things because they want to do other things behind our backs. So we don't focus on that. They keep us busy. That's a fact. And we're getting busy.
Yeah.
It's making us busy.
Absolutely.
And we're not war-torn, but we're politically torn.
Yeah.
We are. And it's just... It's sad when you see, and I loved today's sermon, and I actually cried when Tim said, once you see Jesus, once you have Jesus, you can't unhave him. You don't want the bass only. You want the full band playing. So, you want the full experience of Jesus in every aspect of your life. And once you get that, you don't want to go back anymore to a life without that. Yeah. And you look at other people and you see they just need that. Yeah. And whether it's, and I'm not, hey, everybody, you have to go have Jesus. If you have a faith, if you're a Buddhist, or if you are Muslim, or if you are Christian, whatever it is, find that inner peace from that faith that you have. And once you get that, you cannot live without that anymore. And if everybody has that, they all preach peace. They all preach love. They don't all have the salvation that we have. I get that. I'm not here to convert anybody. They all have peace. They all preach peace. They all preach love. If you see that and live that, there is no way you can inflict the opposite on another human being just by being who they are, just by them being who they are. So it's just, I look at it and I'm sad. I'm not angry. I'm just sad that not everybody gets to see it that way. Because once everybody sees it that way, then we're not busy anymore fighting about politics. We're actually busy loving one another. Yep. And there's this, I learned this, I want to say a month ago, from our fellow youth leader, Craig. Peoples. I don't know where he got it from. I don't know if it's something that was known all along. I didn't know about it. And then I heard it, 2 weeks later, from one of the youth in our ministry, that we were talking about family rules. What are the rules in your family? And he called it the joy rule. And it's just stuck in me. If we all live by that joy rule, our decisions and our words and our actions would really preach peace and bring peace. It's not just the outside, it's inside. It comes from the inside. And so the first one, and the J stands for Jesus, could be God, but it's, the J is for Jesus. O is for others. And then the Y is for yourself. And it's like an inverted hierarchy where it is an inverted triangle. You're going to have to imagine an inverted triangle where the biggest part, part outside of the triangle is on the top, and then the middle, which is Jesus, and then the middle would be others, and then at the end, the smallest part is yourself. When you see everything from that perspective, if God comes first and gets the biggest chunk of your life, then followed by others, serving others, putting others before us. Their needs come before ours. And then you're still there. It's not, you don't just neglect yourself. You're there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do the first 2 steps and then get to yourself, you will have true joy in life. And when you have true joy in life, you want everybody to have that. You would not want anybody to get hurt. But people, again, are so busy fighting over things that is taking it's taking the joy away, which they have the inverted. They have the yourself first. Maybe God next, and then others would be last. But if you have God first, you should know others would be next.
Truly, if you truly have God first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You should know that the next step would be others.
Yep. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Before I close it, and this is a huge question to ask just for the last thing, but if you could sum up just... Okay, so wait, background. I've been wanting to do this forever, and this was before everything popped off with Israel and Palestine. Well, I mean, obviously not before, like recent, which was like what, August?
Before October 7th.
Or was okay?
October 7th.
So everything that happened with Israel and Palestine post or after October, like I wanted to talk to you before this, but then everything happened, and there's so much being put out there now about this, and you have been super vocal on social media every single day. And I love it. Like, I genuinely, I appreciate it. And I love that you're doing that. Because, again, you have a perspective that most of the people on social media who are saying things about this and how to think about this, they have no idea what they're talking about. They just see little bits and pieces, and they're like, oh, this is what this is. You have a much richer understanding, and you have a personal tie, you know, to that area. And you have a better understanding. And so naturally, I'm like, I default to, you know, like your view on things. And so if you could sum up a general thing that you wanted Americans to understand about these things that are going on over there, and that's a big question, what would it be? Like, what would you say?
I would say follow accounts from the opposites. We clearly know there are 2 sides to this, I don't like calling it a conflict because it's not equal parts in power. The power, you know, they're not equal. But let's call it a conflict, so everybody can, you know. There are 2 sides of this conflict. You're following one. This is to everybody who's listening. You're following one. Follow another one as well. Along with the one you're following, follow an opposite one. So look for sources that would disagree with you. And open your heart and minds into understanding why they disagree with you. What are they talking about? Don't immediately, diminish it. Don't immediately dismiss it. Don't dismiss their messages just because they don't agree with you. So follow these sources. That's the easiest thing you can do. It's social media age. Like, just go on Instagram or Twitter and follow people who are on the other side of the conflict. That's the simplest step one. If you want to know more, talk to people who are around you, who you might think. If you have a Middle Eastern friend, this is the time. Call them up.
And if you don't, this is the time to
this
make
is the
one.
this is the time. Go make friends. But yeah, so talk to that person or those people around you. They probably will have a different perspective than you. And again, be open. Be open to what you're about to hear, because it could be like everything you've learned all your life growing up could be a lie. Could be. Or could be blurred to the whole truth. That's the second step. And then the third step, immerse yourself in history. Read history books. You can't maybe you can't go back to 1948 or pre that, Palestine before that, or people aren't alive maybe from that time, but books are there. But it has to be books that are, again, that go against the books that you've read growing up. So authors from the Middle East have a lot, and they're translated. The books are translated, so it's very easy to find. Go to any library and do a Google search, or ask your Middle Eastern friends, what books shall I, read? And if you're not a reader, watch documentaries. Netflix has a bunch. It's not just it has a bunch for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Watch both sides. You know enough. You think you know enough about the one side you're on? You know, check the other side. Check documentaries from the other side. See what their struggle was. See what, you know, how they've been living all these years in this Middle Eastern conflict. So I think those are the 3 tips that I would give.
Okay.
You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
And also follow you on social media.
Please don't. No, my account is private again, and it's scary. It's a scary world out there. Every time I post, I actually posted a post about how scared I am every time I post, and I deleted it. I deleted the post that says every time I post I am scared, because every time I post I am scared. I'm scared I would lose my job. I am scared I would be misunderstood. I am scared to be labeled as anti-anything, because I'm not anti-anything. I'm just pro everybody knowing
the
truth and loving one another.
Yeah.
And I am scared for my family's life, because I've heard stories, you know, in other states. Fortunately, it's not in our states, but it's unfortunate for the other states. Stories about people being targeted for what they stand for. And I'm scared for my kids, because you never want to be the reason why your kids have enemies, or, you know, teachers pick on them, or whatever it is, just because of what their mom thinks, or the, you know. So every time I post, I'm scared. And I still do it, because I do feel like I own it. That's the only thing I can do. I can't go to the Middle East and help people out. I cannot. The only thing I can do right now is just to spread awareness, because I know I have followers who are on the other side. And I'm just trying to let them know that there is another side. I'm right here. I've had a lot of conversations after posting. You're one of them. I've had a bunch, you know, American friends reach out, and we had conversations, and people came over to my house, and we discussed this, you know, lengthily. And I love that. I love that it triggers conversation.
Yeah.
But for the people who don't know me, or my heart, or my faith, or my family, I could actually be in danger. Like my family could, you know, get hurt somehow. And I don't want that.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, you said it, your heart. Like, once people know your heart, it is so hard to hate someone when somebody actually takes the time to get to know your heart. And yeah, like, I know your heart. That's why I wanted to do this, and get it out there, because it's important, you know. Like Martin Luther King Jr. said, you know, the ultimate measure of a man or woman is where they stand in times of great controversy. And I think that has a lot of truth to it, you know. Just when injustice is staring us in the face, we as people have a choice to just block out, you know, just to cover our eyes and plug our ears, or to actually look at and deal with what's going on, you know, internally. You can't always do things, because sometimes it's bigger than you. But to just see things and to actually acknowledge it and be like, this is what's happening, and spreading the word. That's how we change things. I mean, you look at American history, emancipation back then, like, that was the minority. That was the minority of a couple wacky Christians who were like, hey, maybe owning people is really, really wrong. And they refused to remain silent, and you know, they started sharing information about what was happening and all these different things. And before you know it, there's an abolition, you know, movement that is taking over. And obviously, we know how everything, you know, plays out. But it starts with people talking about what's going on, I think. And I think that can be what triggers things, you know. Even if what the things that you're saying, even if it doesn't directly affect what's happening over there, it can really change somebody's life here and the way that they deal with things here. And so even for that reason, I think it's really important just to talk about stuff.
Right. Yeah, it all starts with a conversation from the heart.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, I think that was good.
We did it, Bernard.
We did it finally.
Your 1 year. What years you said you've been trying to do this?
30 years.
There you are. We've done We did it.
Finally. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do this again if you're up for it.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess this is the part where I sign off. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you have questions, I don't know, DM me or whatever on social media at Mr. C Thunder. It's Mr. MISTER.C_Thunder. And you can talk to me there. Be like, hey, I hate this. Please stop doing it. You can say that too. I'd be okay with that. But I'd love to hear from people because Spotify Wrapped told me that people actually listen. So thank you. Cool. Thank you again.
Thank you.
This is great. This is fantastic. Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.